Hello, my name is Tricia Hart. I'm the Developmental Minister of this First Unitarian Universalist Society of Burlington. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Members of the congregation and friends and visitors from wherever you've come from, wherever you are now, you are welcome. There are a couple of special elements in the service today because it is the first Sunday in June. We will have a new member recognition run by the membership committee, and at the meditation we're including a reflection for all ages about George Floyd, led by Margo Whitcomb and Erika Reif. It's for children and parents, and it's for all of us. And next week we're doing what might become a tradition, which is a question box sermon, which I'm calling Stump the Minister. What that means is that instead of me deciding what I'm preaching on, you get to decide by submitting questions. We'll send out an email about this, but if you have a question that you would like for me to address next week, please send an email to the office to Mary Williams, and she will forward them on to the worship associates who are sorting them out and figuring out how to present them to me. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, as always today, to Sam Whitesell and James Stewart for our music and our production, and this week, and a special thanks to the choir. If you would like to learn more about Unitarian Universalism and this congregation, look for the link. It's on YouTube underneath this video. You can send us a note, let us know who you are, and we'll be in touch with you. Gather your chalice, your tea, your coffee, your family around you, and your comfortable seat. We are apart today in body, but united in our hearts, in our care for each other and for the world. Let us worship. The call to worship today are from the words of Harold Collymore. Personally, I want a religion to live by. I want a faith to work by. I must confess that for me the pace has been slow. The gains have been small in my quest for God, my quest for a faith. I am still far from that goal, but still I seek. Out of all the tragedy and the doubt, I do believe that I have emerged perhaps one step forward. From experience, I know that there are contrasts in living, and in these contrasts there can be found a good life. A life of peace, of goodwill, of decency, of love, of harmony, of beauty. This conscious effort to achieve the good life might be considered a religion. I can share in a religion like this. Let us light our chalice. Say the words with me. We kindle this chalice flame to remind ourselves of the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment.
Hi, my name is Sarah Russell, co-chair of the membership committee of the First Unitarian Universalist Society of Burlington, and welcome to our new member recognition ceremony. We run this ceremony 3 times a year during the worship service, and even in the time of COVID, we feel it is important to run it So here we are on a Zoom call, welcoming some of our newest members. We have 6 new members live today on the screen, so give a little wave when I call your name. In alphabetical order, they are Marilyn Brill, Kathy Clark, Isolde Frank, Linda Proctor, Ralph Underkoffler, and Susan Warner Mills. As a faith community, we welcome all seekers, from those who walk through the door for the first time to those who have found a home here for many years. This morning, we lift up and celebrate those just over 24 members who have signed the membership book in the last 18 months. Each of our new members has attended the new UU program, made a financial commitment, and signed the membership book, thereby committing themselves to participating in the life of this society and supporting its mission. By officially joining, they become voting members of the congregation and thereby have an official voice in charting the course of this spiritual community. In our Unitarian Universalist faith, each congregation's membership has the great responsibility of calling its ministers and determining its future. Our purpose as a congregation is to recognize and to care for each other, to explore the spiritual pathways that call to us, alone and together, and to reach out in service to the wider human community. We gather freely and inclusively, welcoming and valuing the rich diversity among us. I'd like to welcome now Dan House, who's president of the board of First UU Society of Burlington.
Thank you, Sarah. As president of this congregation, I welcome you on behalf of all First UU Society of Burlington members, past, present, and future. May we be worthy of your trust. Thank you for being here, and thank you for signing the membership book. It takes a great deal of faith and courage to say yes, to trust a new community to take you in, to love you in your uniqueness, and to challenge you to become something more than you. Reverend Patricia, you have some additional words for our new members?
I do indeed. Becoming a member at a Unitarian Universalist congregation is, as you know, a simple thing. You just sign the membership book. It's also complicated, and it can be kind of a hard thing to do. When people sign the membership book, they're saying, this place, this community is my spiritual home now. The people of this, your congregation, join together to challenge and nurture one another in searching for meaning, in speaking honestly, in acting with compassion, loving without prejudice, and living with integrity. And a quick note to the congregation, to all of you who are watching, it's important that you're here too, because when people join this or any other congregation, they're not joining a building or a minister, they're joining a community. And it's you, the members of this congregation, because you're already generous and creative and diverse and interesting and friendly. That's why other people want to come and be a part of this good thing. So as you proceed and figure out how to welcome these new members, I just have a suggestion and a request. Think about how it was that you were welcomed, how someone reached out to you, got to know your name, invited you to something, and recognize that even in these times of distancing, when we're not together in the meeting house, you can still do some of that. You can learn names, you can get to know people in Zoom meetings, you can reach out to them, so that we'll already have strengthened the ties even before we come together physically in the meeting house. Linda Graves, the other co-chair of the membership committee, will now lead you all in the litany of membership.
We welcome you with joy and love into the life of this community. We promise to journey with you in times of joy and sorrow and ask you to journey with us.
As seekers of truth and meaning, we commit ourselves to this living tradition, We will journey with you.
And so I also invite you to say the words, connected to those who came before us and those who will come after us. We commit ourselves anew to the sacred work of serving our mission and sharing our ministry with one another in the world. And I warmly welcome you all to this First Unitarian Universalist Society of Burlington. Now, please note that names that will scroll by of the few dozen that have joined in the last 18 months. Thank you.
I say it every week, and every week it's true. This good congregation exists because you support it and its work in the world. You support it with your time and your love and your energy and your money. Thank you. Today, a special thanks for those who are the members of this congregation. I hope that you will attend the annual meeting, which will happen at 11 o'clock today. Annual meetings are important, and fundamentally, when it comes down to it, the annual meeting is when you all decide that this good congregation is going to be here for next year too, which seems especially important right now. I hope you'll be there. Right now, there's an opportunity for you to give members and friends and visitors too. There are lots of ways you can do that. The instructions will be on the screen in just a minute. This week's offering will be shared with Planned Parenthood of Northern New England. Thank you for your faith and your gifts. Would you join me, please, in the dedication for our offering today? With gratitude, we dedicate these gifts in the service of our mission to inspire spiritual growth, care for each other and our community, seek truth, and act for justice. And now our meditation, our reflection for all ages. After the reflection, we will have a moment of silence and then sing together, Spirit of Life.
Hello, everyone.
Today we need to talk to you, our UU children and families, about something that happened in our country that is, well, hard to talk about. But it is a true story, and it's a story you might have heard already. And in figuring out how to talk about this, we looked for guidance from a UU congregation in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
There's something hard that happened there in Minneapolis, and it happened to George Floyd. George was a 46-year-old man. His loved ones called him Big Floyd because he was a very tall man with an equally big heart. One of his friends said he was a quiet spirit and a gentle personality. George was a father, a son, a brother, and an uncle. This is George's family. You can see they look very sad. On May 25th, George was arrested in Minnesota. A policeman said that George was trying to use fake money to buy something. The policeman pinned George to the ground, handcuffed him, and put his knee on George's neck. He left his knee there for a very long time, even when George cried out that he couldn't breathe. None of the other police officers did anything to help George. They also wouldn't let anybody else help him either. George died from the actions of those police officers. George was African American, a Black man, and the police officer was a white man and had a history of violence. The video of this went public all over the news, the internet, and newspapers everywhere. People across the country began to protest. Protesters are people who publicly demonstrate a strong objection to something. Have you ever been a protester? Now, there are people all over the world protesting the injustice against George and demanding an end to the many other killings of Black people by white people. Black people have struggled way too long in this country just to be treated fairly, to feel safe in their own country. This is a very sad and a very old story of America. It is the story of racism. It has been with this country since slavery, a long, long time ago. And even before that, against Native Americans. As Unitarian Universalists, we are against racism. We pledge to take action for racial justice and Black people everywhere. Black lives matter. We have a banner in front of the church that says just that. Maybe you have seen it? How can you remember George? You could write a poem or draw a picture, maybe write a card to George's family. Perhaps you and your family could light a candle and say a prayer for more love and justice for everybody.
Talk with your families. Be gentle with each other. This is hard. As adults, we've been through this before, and we're supposed to know what we're doing. It's hard to understand how we could let this happen again. All of us has an essential part to play in ending racism, even children.
Even while this sadness surrounds us, there is much hope. Thousands, millions of people have shown up to remember George. Some policemen have even joined the marches for justice. This week, when a reporter asked George's 6-year-old daughter what she had to say of him, she said, "My daddy changed the world."
I've been listening and watching the news this week. I imagine you have too. I was thinking one day, as the news was in the background, I was thinking about the intrepid reporters who've been out in the streets every day, every night, for the last 10 days or more, reporting on and filming the extraordinary history that we are living through right now. They're filming the violence of people who are there to destroy, whether a business or people's bodies and minds. Violent people, including police and other armed military forces who are there. Why are they there? I was thinking how grateful I am for the miracle of cell phone cameras, but even more for the reporters who are determined to tell the truth as they experience it and at no small risk to themselves. I found myself in this moment imagining the accolades, the awards that these reporters might receive for their courage and their heroism, their clarity, their storytelling about real people behind the pictures. It felt really good for that minute, thinking about what life might be like months or years from now, longing for the time when this is all over. But here's the thing. We're not there. We're here. We're not living at some better time in the past or in the future, in our imaginations, This is our time. There are things for us to learn and work for us to do. What are we learning in the midst of this pandemic and national protests? Not just protests about the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and so many, many more. Not just protesting because they should never have died in the ways that they did, but protesting the racism and violence of our society, which is wrong and must change. The racism and violence of our social systems, the institutions and politicians that enforce those systems, including the police. Watching all this as it unfolds around us, we are learning again that we really are all connected and interdependent. This is seventh principle stuff, you know, the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. We are a part of the natural world and it is a part of us, but we are also part of the human world too. We're people and we share germs and viruses and ideas and actions. We know that it's true, and now if we're awake, we're feeling it. We're learning again that when the rights and dignity and life of some are hurt, we are all damaged. We're trying to be safe, and we're learning again that real safety doesn't come from hiding, especially not hiding from the truth. We are definitely learning that a virus doesn't stay in one place, and neither does indifference or hatred or unreasonable, unjust ideas of the superiority of one kind of person over others. Those ideas don't stay put in communities. They spread until they are confronted and condemned and changed. And we are learning again that people are not prisoners of the way things are. Stuck in common assumptions that are just wrong. People are flexible and creative and willing to learn. Sometimes there really is goodness and hope and beauty and creativity out there and right here. This is first principle stuff, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and also the third principle, the one that tells us that we are to accept one another and encourage one another to spiritual growth. It is not inevitable that we stay stuck. I learned something yesterday. I was reading an article about polling, but in this case, not polling about politics, but attitudes. Maybe you know this already. Maybe you know that the percentage of Americans who understand that racism and discrimination are wrong is increasing. There was a Monmouth University poll which said this week that 76% of Americans, 3/4 of us, including 71% of white people, think that racism and discrimination is a big problem in the United States. That, my friends, is a 26 percentage point spike since 2015. Attitudes are changing. 78% in this poll I was reading about said that anger about that the anger of the demonstrators is either fully or somewhat justified. 78%. That surprised me. And then there's a CBS poll which said that 57% of Americans said police are more likely to mistreat black people than white people. And about half of the people who are pretty sure about this are white. This is a drastic change because white Americans have historically not believed that black people still face pervasive discrimination. Just a couple more. In 2009, the year Barack Obama took office, just 36% of white Americans said that the country needed to do more to make sure that Black people had equal rights. 36%. In 2017, 4 years after the start of the Black Lives Matter movement, that number had gone up from 36% to 54%, more than half of white people. It's not enough, but it's not nothing. These changes are real. And now, this week, radical ideas like cutting funding for police departments and giving more to social services in our cities, those ideas are being openly embraced by some mayors and even police chiefs in cities, including Los Angeles. There is a lot of learning going on. Everything is changing. At least it might be, should be, could be. Change is hard, but we are not stuck. We don't have to be. In community, when people gather and talk to each other, even when they're on Zoom or across safe distances, people learn things from one another. They think ideas they had never thought before. They listen sometimes, and minds get changed and hearts, which leads people to read books and attend webinars and write emails and letters and come to vigils like the one today. At 1 p.m., some of us will be standing in silent vigil and in solidarity with Black people and oppressed people of all kinds in this country, and we'll be doing that with people at St. Paul's Cathedral and First Congregational Church, and I'm not sure what others. We'll be there quietly with masks. We should bring those, and signs. You can bring a sign too. It might say, "Racism kills and must end." It might say, "I care," or "Black Lives Matter," or "I am awake and I vote." Everything is changing, including religious communities. There's way too much that could be said about this, but I just want to leave you with one point that just occupies my attention these weeks. We used to understand what the fundamental things are that hold this congregation together, and most congregations. Those things are the building and gathering on Sundays. We haven't had either of those things for months now, and the congregation is not only still here, but in some ways thriving in surprising and new, changing ways. We're still learning what they mean. Connections are being made among members and friends, and between this and other congregations in the area and nationally, learning is happening. Minds and hearts and intentions are changing. There is more love right here, which is, after all, what this congregation is all about. I'm going to end with just a little anecdote from my new favorite blog writer, Courtney Martin. She's a young mother. She lives in Oakland, California. She has 2 young daughters. And this past week, she and her husband took the girls to a protest. Because, she says, that's the kind of moment this is. One where you know your grown kids will one day ask you, where were we when America rose up from its pandemic pause anew and unrecognizable? She was scared, she said. They didn't really know how to do what they were doing. So they followed the leadership of others, especially Black youth. They said, we don't really understand. And the leaders said, you will. Let us end with the words of Anonymous. Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. So may it be. So may it blessed be.
Though below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, breathe the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbored or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat. And the earth is my blue boat.
Let us extinguish our chalice and say the words together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share with the world until we are together again. Today's benediction from the work of James Baldwin. One day, perhaps unimaginable generations hence, we will evolve into the knowledge that human beings are more important than real estate, and will permit this knowledge to become the ruling principle of our lives. For I do not for an instant doubt, and I will go to my grave believing that we can build Jerusalem if we will. Go in peace.